Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Enlightened Entrepreneur Podcast. Today, I have a special guest, and this is the second part of the podcast we just did not too long ago. And we had so much value from the previous episode that we decided to have Christopher Mills back again on the show so he can explain those missing parts or those parts that we did not cover on the first show. So, I'm very excited about this as always. My name is Yokai Kajidori, and I'm hoping that you are here excited and ready to take notes, and most importantly, being able to implement what you're going to learn today. So my guest is Christopher Mills. Christopher, welcome to the show.
Thanks very much again for having me back, Yokai.
Excellent. Just to get us started, maybe there are people in the audience who missed the last show. Can you tell us about your background very briefly, the things that you've done, and how you got to where you are today?
Sure. So definitely listen to part one because we go into a nice amount of detail. But to cover it very quickly, I run a digital marketing agency in South Africa. We service clients both locally and abroad, Europe, America, and the likes. And I actually got to where I am now, mostly from hard work and commitment, but it all started from just running a blog about marketing and technology. But listen to part one, that's where all the nuts and bolts are.
Yes, that's beautiful. And you've done quite well in your own right, starting from scratch to now you're running an agent, which is giving a lot of value in terms of digital marketing to to South Africans and now abroad. So we're going to dive into the tips maybe, or the tricks or the secrets that you've learned along the way. So to get us started, Christopher, what can you share with our audience today about the digital marketing?
I think probably one of the biggest things when I look at my career and I've been doing this a long time, and I sort of take the years of the journey and I try and put them all together, and I try and do that whenever we work with anyone, whether we're implementing strategies or just advising someone. I think the big things for me, or the biggest thing, is to not feel overwhelmed. And a couple of few years ago, we suddenly had Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Google+, Pinterest. There are so many different networks, and wherever you are in the world, there are different ones, especially if you're on the east and up towards Russia and the likes. And I think what happens to a lot of people, and what I've seen happen, is people sit down and they think digital marketing, and they think, okay, that's got to be social media. And what they do is they race off and they try and create a Facebook account, a Google+ account, a LinkedIn account, and all the different social media accounts. And they sit there and they go, goodness, how do I actually deal with all of this? And what happens is they turn to Google and they start trying to research it, and they soon uncover the fact that digital marketing encompasses a lot more. And that includes search engine optimization, PPC. And so I think my biggest thing there is to not feel overwhelmed and not race off to try and conquer everything, but to rather take a step backwards and have a think about your audience first. And you find a lot of companies can't market on Facebook because it doesn't work. And we have clients and partners coming to us and saying, we need to be on Facebook. We need a Facebook page. We need adverts and the likes. And we'll look at the situation and we'll say, we can do this, but don't expect a big return on investment. Don't expect suddenly getting 5,000, 10,000, 100,000 people liking your page, because we don't believe that your audience is there. And in situations like that, we go back to what I've just said and we say, let's slow down and let's assess, why did you think you had to be on Facebook, and what do you hope to get from Facebook as a return? And so I think my biggest thing is to just slow it down a little. And it's difficult because digital marketing in the online world is, and we call it inbound marketing, is such a fast-paced industry, and it makes you feel like you have to move so quickly. But the truth is, in any business, if you move too quickly, you can definitely fail. It's the same as if you move too slowly, you can fail. You have to find a bit of a middle ground there. And that's how I normally start things off, because there are so many avenues. I think there's probably 30 or 40 avenues to do with inbound marketing or digital marketing that I could rattle off right now. And
Right.
half of them are 20 times more complex than setting up a Facebook page. And if you sit and look at that as a director of a business or a marketing manager or an entrepreneur starting out, you're going to think, how can I fit that into my day along with everything else?
Right. And you mentioned something very important there. Having clarity as to who you are targeting with really is the first step to to getting massive success. Because if you know who you're targeting, you will also know where they hang out. And if you know where they hang out, you know the sort of information they are talking about, and how they need to be communicated with, and you present your product or your service right there, and it's an easy sale because you understand them better than just to go, all over the place without a clear understanding of who you're targeting with. Well, just moving on that, Chris, what if somebody hasn't done that part, or they feel they are stuck in that particular area? What can they do?
It's a difficult one, and I guess you can approach it almost like any situation. I think there's two approaches to that. Right. The one is to turn to our friendly friend, good old Google, and start Googling. I worry about that, and I think everyone knows that when it comes to something like medicine and sickness and things, one should never turn to Google, because all roads lead to the same terrible answer.
That's right.
And so as much as I love people turning to Google and doing some research, I feel that is also overwhelming. So the two things that I think I'd recommend, and I'll go with the first one because it's quicker, and that's a good old get a book. And it sounds so funny whenever I say that to people, because I'm so engrossed in digital. I don't think I've really picked up a book in a long time. I read some entrepreneurship magazines, but
yes.
Books don't come to me too often. But going into a bookshop, we got exclusive books in South Africa, and going in there and picking up a book and moving away from the computer a little bit and just having a brief read through a book on something like digital marketing, maybe digital marketing for small businesses. Because yes. What happens there is that you have a credible and a vetted author who has written a consistent and continuing.
Absolutely. And they would have taken time to study the subject before they can publish, because they're putting their name to it as well.
That's exactly it. Whereas if you go online and you have a look at, you sort of perform a Google search, you're going to find several different articles. They're going to have different opinions, and you don't know who the authors are. And people are very good at writing an article online and getting it up to the top of Google, and it maybe isn't necessarily the best answer. And what I stumbled on a second ago was the word continuity. And when you're looking online and via Google, there isn't going to be continuity between the articles. And the saddest part is that a lot of the articles that you find will be set up by guys who are affiliate marketers who are sort of punting and pushing products, because if you go and sign up for the product, they get a kickback of 10% or $50 or whatever it might be. And so I'd like to say that Google is the most incredible source of information, but it maybe wouldn't be my first step. That would maybe be a book where you've got a single author. Now, the second part to all of this, and the second avenue that I think is absolutely priceless, is right. Networking. And, before the podcast, we were talking about this a little bit. And I know friends who run businesses that do all sorts of different things. And for them wanting to get into digital, I always say to them, go to one of the networking events, or go to one of the tech shows. And we've got some down here called Tech for Africa and this or that. I know overseas there's SMX and the bigger fancy ones. And just by going to one of those, you can sit down, you can listen to some inspiring talks, but then you network afterwards. And I think it's easier to get a book for someone who's introverted and shy. But if you aren't introverted and you like to meet people, which I think as a key business running skill you need to sort of learn, go in there and say to someone, I heard you talking about this. I'm not a digital guy. My business does XYZ, but I really think digital is an option. And speak to someone and see what they say to you and see which route they guide you. So I think between getting a book and maybe going to a networking event, if you have the courage, those are great starting points just to get a bit of a foundation. Then I would turn to regular old Google. But I'd only hit Google once you get sort of a familiarity with what the words mean. And when you get involved and there's all these, cost per clicks and impressions and things, it gets, and retweets. And sometimes that's even a complex word for someone who doesn't understand digital. It's heck of overwhelming. And I think those two channels separate you from all the noise and put you really into some valuable pockets.
Incredible. Really, for me, networking is an absolute must in my business. Even at this stage in my business, I still go out one evening, to just go and network, because you develop really relationship, because the people you meet there, they are not everyday, Joe, that, looking to figure out, where is the next meal going to come from, or, the next income or whatever. These are people who are genuinely looking to, to build value, to build relationship, and also, to generate a long time business out of it. And when you do it well, it pays dividends later on. Just to move on to that, still talking about digital marketing, Christopher, how do you figure out which digital platform to go with when you're getting started in your business?
Good. It's a very good question, and it puts me nice and on the spot. So I think you mentioned it earlier, and you mentioned talking about your figuring out the target audience and then being able to figure out where the target audience is. And I think a lot of the time business owners think that their online audience is very different to their offline audience. And I've picked that up over the last maybe 2 years. I don't want to say much longer than that, but the last 2 years where I've sat down in meetings, and this is with, really big stock exchange listed companies, all the way to small guys running a little corner shop. And there's this understanding that your online audience is so different to your offline audience. But the thing is, and look, I'm talking from a port of like South Africa, where we're not as online as Europe and America and the likes. Right. But I think it's persistent across the world, where people think their online audience is that much different to offline. And I don't think that's the case anymore. I think for a while it was. And I think these days, because of the likes of Facebook and such, people are so much more familiar with being online, and you're on Facebook. Everyone's on Facebook, literally. So you've got an understanding there. And with Facebook, you're seeing so much more of e-commerce coming in there, and people moving and then buying online. There's this familiarity. So I think the first thing is to really understand your offline audience, which at this point, I hope a business owner would understand well. If you're thinking of going into digital, I would hope that your traditional model is working. I don't think I'd recommend jumping into digital if your traditional's failing. Look, it's business dependent, but I think you need to understand your core audience offline before you jump online. And once you do understand your offline audience, you then need to start doing the forms of research, and again, talking to people and trying to isolate where potentially they might be online. And if you've got a business that deals with something very professional and business related, then one thing to do is to look at something like LinkedIn. So right. I bring that up because one approach might be, right, let's go look at Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and let's do some research around those social networks and find out what type of people are on the social networks and what is the purpose of the social network. So I see LinkedIn as a very professional place. So if you're a big professional business-to-business company, that's potentially a far better avenue than something like Facebook. If you're a brand where you're selling, a very high consumer-driven product, then something like Facebook could be correct and LinkedIn might not be. And that's sort of your social media side of things. Now, moving away from the social media and back into the search engine sphere of things, in that instance, when you perform a search, we've got the adverts at the top, and then we've got what we call the organic results underneath. Right. Now, looking at that situation, you think to yourself, well, how many people Google for things? You know, everybody Googles for things. So how do I get my business onto that page one? And by doing a little bit of searching, you'll find out that the practice is known as search engine optimization. And then you think to yourself, okay, but now there's 3 or 4 adverts above that area, and there's 3 or 4 adverts below that area. What is that? And then you find out it's called Google AdWords. And you have a look at Google AdWords and you realize it's Google's pay-per-click marketing channel. So now you've got this information where you're looking at your social networks, you're looking at Google, for example. And those are just 2 options. We've got YouTube where we can do videos and that sort of thing. You know, this is a lovely platform right here. We've got podcasting. And I'm pretty sure you guys do a lot of podcasting to generate interest in the overarching holding company of everything. And so there's so many different avenues, but you always have to do your due diligence and finding out what are the avenues and what sort of people are in those avenues. And then you can sort of start taking steps forward to actually try and execute something. I don't know if that addresses your question spot on, but it seemed the best way for me to patch it together.
Absolutely, it makes perfect sense. Given where you're coming from as a digital marketer, for several years, and I'm hoping that our audience are able to take a lot of notes at the same time. There's one thing that I wanted to point out that you mentioned right at the beginning of answering that question. It is about when you were talking about Facebook and all that. Would you repeat what you said in regards to before you move on to the digital marketing, you need to understand your traditional marketing. Why is that important?
I think the reason I bring that up is I have this just what I've picked up over the years, just the sense that people think those 2 audiences are so very different. Right. And I worry that a person looks at their company and goes, my offline demographic is gentlemen between the age of 30 and 40 years old because I sell a golfing product or something silly like that. Right. But suddenly they think, okay, but if I go online, my audience, a golfer's going to be online. I don't think so. It's more the guys who are geeky that are online. I'm exaggerating here for effect. But They start thinking like that. And I sit in meetings and I talk to them. And I often ask people, who do you think your audience is online? And I know who their audience is online, and I know who their audience is offline because I do my research. And I can obviously do it a lot quicker because I've been doing it a long time for a lot of different businesses. And they describe their online audience very differently to their offline audience. And it's not everybody, but it boggles my mind why people do that. If you understand who your offline audience is, you know what? 70% of your online audience is going to be very similar people. If you're selling golfing products offline, your online audience is going to be very similar. It's going to be people who want to play golf. And for some reason, that is a stumbling block. And I've thought about it so much, and I've spoken to my team and I've spoken to friends and family and tried to see if any of them have more intelligence than me and can come up with a great answer for that. But we just can't. And all I can think is that it just happens to be the fact that online is seen as a very different mechanism because it's so much younger than offline traditional side of things. I mean, don't get me wrong. Your online audience can be different to your offline audience. I mean, there are many obvious reasons for that. But at the crux of it, if you understand who the person is that you're marketing to, a transition to online is not as difficult as if you think you're starting completely from scratch.
Incredible. Thank you for clarifying that. Let's move on to another, slightly different. Imagine this. I'm a new client coming to you, Christopher, and say, look, I've been running my business here. It is a traditional business, and I'm thinking of going on digital. What are the steps that I need to take? Talk to me as if I'm your client and you're looking through my services that I'm
Sure. So Something that's worked really, really well for me over the years is to I would want to ask you, what is the aim of coming online, and why do you think you should be on a digital platform? And I'd normally say to a person, It seems like an obvious question, but I'm asking it because it gives me a bit of an understanding of what you think you're going to achieve. A lot of the time, people think putting their business online suddenly means that they're going to 10x their revenue because there's so many people online and the business is open 24/7. So how can I not make 10 times as much profit at the end of the year? People think that. They think if they open up online, it's just going to work. Unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. So I like to have a very open sort of advisory chat. And that's what I've done a lot in my years of running an agency is I like to speak to someone a little bit more as an advisor and a friend before trying to turn into a salesperson to sell my skills, because I actually really want to get to know what they're hoping to achieve and why they think that's going to happen. Because I know that if I understand that, I can give them the service that they want. And you know what happens then? They don't leave after 6 months. They stay for 5 years. And for me, that has been a big one. Right in the beginning, it wasn't like that. It was sort of just a hurry sort of thing. But when I learned how to hold relationships and really hit what a person was interested in, that got really interesting. I'll tell you some of my experiences. So a lot of companies that come to us, you'd imagine, why does a person want to do online marketing? For one simple reason: we want to make more money. That is what business is about. But I found that a lot of companies don't look at it as short-sightedly as that. Some of the bigger companies, even the smaller ones, some of the bigger ones come along and go, we're not interested in actually making a whole lot of sales on our website. We don't handle sales like that. So we don't want to have an e-commerce platform installed and that sort of thing. We're actually here to get our brand well known online. So what can we do to make sure that our brand starts appearing everywhere? Because we're looking at it from a reputational point of view where people see our brand. So when they're offline and they see an advert or something, and then they're online again, they see the advert again, it reinforces the brand. And what that does is it builds trust. And then they sell their services offline. So they're using an online mechanism for a branding, reputation, trust point of view, but not actually to make a hard sale. Now, half the other people that come along say to me, no, you know what? We just want to sell and we want to make money. And that's why I like to have that discussion in the beginning to understand, because if I go off on a tangent and put together a huge proposal about an e-commerce website, send it across to them and they get it, they're going to look at it and go, okay, well, this is completely wrong. And they're going to chuck it in the waste paper basket. And so I like to have that initial chat with you just to understand really what is it that you're trying to achieve.
Incredible. I love what you said about, understanding, their goal, their aim, because I know many of the people in our audience here that they're still at that stage where money is the main goal. They have to make cash immediately. But if listen to what you're saying here, and what I've experienced as well, is if you just shift a little bit from just making money initially, rushing to make money, to developing the relationship and seeing how you can really help this person, really add value to what they are doing. It's amazing the trust you create. They will become happy with your service. They will become your salesperson because they will be very happy to talk about your services to other people, which of course is going to lead to more sales for your part. So if you're listening and you've caught yourself in that pace where you're just going after money, you want the sell. Chris and myself here agree on this thing that of course in the beginning it's like that, but you will need to come to a place where you say, okay, money is important, but the most important thing for me is to look after this person so well. And make sure that they understand what they're doing and where they're going. Money will become, it's a byproduct, but you will have it over and over and over again.
And I think the one thing I can add to that pulls things together a little bit is, you're going to need to work with a company if you're not going to be able to do this all yourself, because look, it's possible to do it all yourself. But if you're in a position where your time is spent running your business and you need to get someone to take on your digital marketing, you want to have a good relationship with them, because maybe you start with something like Google AdWords. Maybe you start there, but at some point when that starts working for you, you might want to look at search engine optimization. Then you might want to look at Facebook page. Then you might want to look at paid marketing on Facebook. Then you might want to look at LinkedIn and paid marketing there, and a Twitter campaign. And so it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And I feel like you sort of want to do that with the same person and the same agency. You don't want to have to know that your PPC marketing through AdWords is with company X and your other thing is with company Y. And suddenly you've got so many different people that you have to talk to. Now, one might argue and say, it's okay, I can handle talking to a lot of people. That's not the problem. The problem is actually having all the service providers being able to talk to each other.
That's
because
right.
all of these digital marketing channels work very much together. But I want to add one more little thing into that. From my personal opinion, when it comes to social media being on the one side and SEO and PPC and the likes being on the other side, I'm a big fan of doing social media yourself or using an agency that specializes in social media. I'm not a fan. So my company can do social media, but if someone is only looking for social media, we have a company that we partner up with, and we normally refer people to them. I like people who specialize in social media to do social media, because people think it's easy, but it's not. Either do it yourself or get a specialized person to do it. Agency that offers everything to do it, because I see that fail more than I see it win.
Incredible. Really, there's great information coming on here. That's why I love doing these things, because, things becomes clearer and clearer, for our listeners. Is there anything that I haven't asked you, Christopher, regarding the digital marketing that you feel our audience would benefit the most by, talking about them at this point?
Sure. So I did have a think about this, and I thought, and I didn't pre-plan anything, but what I wanted to do is I wanted to run through a couple of channels that I felt would be in the order of, it's hard to explain this, but which order would I tackle some of the channels in? And I base these things on a couple of levels. So how difficult is it? What sort of budget do you need to do it? How much learning and research do you have to do? What is most tangible and that sort of thing. And so I felt what I'd do is I'd run through a couple of channels that I felt people could look at right away. I am a little bit biased because of my background, but I'm a very, very big fan of blogging.
Right.
Blogging is huge, and I don't believe it's going anywhere anytime soon. Maybe the name blogging is not as popular, and these days people use the words content marketing. That's the big buzzword at the moment. All it means, blogging, content marketing, content schedule, 10x content, all of it basically boils down to writing text. That is it. And I feel that the first point of entry for anyone, assuming that they have a website, this can get quite technical, so let me not actually go in that avenue. But get yourself a blog. If you're running a company or trying to start a company, one assumes that you know a lot about it and that you're a professional and have experience. So start a blog and write about the industry that you're in with the aim of trying to be an industry leader. If you're writing great content online on your blog or on your website, and people find it via Google, for example, if someone shares it on Facebook, and someone comes along and reads it and sees you as a leader, the chances of them wanting to use your services are far greater than a hard sell, because Absolutely. You're writing, you're explaining. And so I'm a really big fan of blogging and content marketing. And I guess a couple of like snippets here that I can offer up there. It is always quality over quantity.
Right.
Always. Maybe go back 5 or 6, 7 years ago, quantity over quality worked a little bit. No longer the case. It's quality over quantity. So you don't have to write a blog post every single day. That, most people don't know how to do that and can't do that. So try and do something where you write one every 2 weeks, for example, and write about things that you understand, but don't write in such a way that you're trying to sell. share some of information, share your insight, and put yourself really as someone who understands a topic. And I think that is a great one. And little things like, you don't have to write an article that's 5,000 words long that's going to take you 3 or 4 days to write. You can keep your articles to, maybe I suggest 600 to 800 words. That's a little bit of a standard that we go off. If you can do a 3,000 word one, that's brilliant. But there's no point writing a 3,000 word article if only 1,000 of the words are worthwhile. So try and get to 600 to 800 and don't write any